Hey everybody, John Boutet here, Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame. And we're welcome back to another episode of Back in Time, where we look back at Buffalo's great people of our past and our sports past. And we have another fantastic episode for you this week. When I found out who our guest was going to be this week, I got really excited because he's from my hometown and he went to my high school. So this is somebody that we've looked up to for a long time. I want to welcome Don Criqui to our show tonight. And Don is a legendary sports announcer, broadcaster, tremendous career, 47 years in the NFL. And we'd like to welcome Don tonight. How are you, Don?
Very well, John. Very nice to be with you.
Thanks again for coming on. This is fantastic. When I told a lot of our fans that I was going to be interviewing you tonight, they really excited because, like I said, when Buffalo people are really, really special people, and when one of us makes it big, we all make it big. So thank you again for doing this.
Well, it's a pleasure.
Don, I want to start with you right back to the beginning, if we can. Growing up in Kenmore, town of Tonawanda, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you went to St. John the Baptist School, correct?
I did.
That's where I went as well. So like I said, we have a lot in common.
It's a great place, a great place. I'll never forget the nuns there. What great teachers.
Oh, fantastic teachers. What do you remember most about Kenmore and town of Tonawanda?
Well, just, it's where I grew up. You love it. I mean, you played sports there. You went to school there. It's always going to be, I think, home. We've been in New Jersey for a lot of years, since 1965. But Buffalo is a great place, and certainly Kenmore's a part of it.
Yeah, it hasn't really changed that much, which is great for us residents here. You went on to my alma mater, St. Joseph's Collegiate Institute over on Kenmore Avenue, and had a great career there. Can you talk a little bit about your time at St. Joe's?
Well, I had 4 great years at St. Joe's, playing basketball and baseball and all the things we did there. Christian Brothers are a real big part of our lives, everybody that went there. And the other teachers, I mean, I had some of the greatest teachers I've ever had there, like Brother Alfred for Latin. And my mother, who was an English teacher from South Buffalo, Margaret O'Donnell was her maiden name. She always told me to take Latin because it teaches you to think. I hope that worked. But my mother graduated from college when she was 19 years old, and she was teaching in South Park High School.
Wow.
Was never a great sports fan, John, but her whole family was, my dad and my brothers and everyone. And but as a high school English teacher, she taught a guy that she said, I didn't know much about him, but they said he was a very good ball player. Well, I guess he was. He won 363 major league games as a pitcher. Warren Spahn.
Probably Buffalo's greatest professional athlete, at least my opinion. I think he is.
And I always thought he was a real big guy, but he wasn't. She said he wasn't that big, but he was great. 363 wins. Isn't
it amazing? The winningest left-handed pitcher of all time. And a funny statistic that I've read, he had 363 base hits, which is
that right?
Yeah, which is kind of amazing statistic for a pitcher.
Well, not a major league pitcher doesn't get, in the American League doesn't get 363 bats in his career.
That's true. That's right. I have to ask you this. Do you remember Joe Wolfe? Joe Wolfe would have
very well. Very good friend, Joe.
Yeah. Joe was my athletic director there for a long time. He just retired just a couple of years ago, and he's legendary there. And I know he graduated 1 year before you did.
He did, yes. Joe and Dennis Riley, who was a retired oral surgeon out in La Jolla, California, all great friends. He and Joe are great friends. And Joe was a tremendous part of St. Joe's athletics. Joe Wolfe.
Yeah, he brought so many sports to St. Joe's, not just the Big Four, but he brought so many sports to St. Joe's. He's revered, and he's still living in Kenmore, and he's doing well. He sends his regards.
That's great. Yeah, because I get, we get emails every so often.
Yeah. So you leave St. Joe's and you go on to bigger and better things at the University of Notre Dame. can you tell us a little bit why Notre Dame, other than our Catholic background?
Well, I'd always wanted to go there. I mean, since I was young, I guess it had to do with identify the football team early on, which my dad used to listen to on the radio. That's my first really memory of sports. And fortunately, the St. Joe's education got me in there. Went with some great people from Buffalo, like Bob Bennett, who ended up as the chancellor of the New York State Board of Regents, and Hank Burns. And so we all had a great time there for 4 years. And that's where I got started in broadcasting with a student station.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about on your biography that you kind of were you the sports director at the university?
I was with the WSND, the students radio station. That's where I began. Got to do Notre Dame basketball, and football was always a network, but I worked on some of the games as a spotter and things like that. So it was and I gave a tremendous, they call it communication arts, which was very, very invaluable to me. Tremendous.
Yeah, you can't pick a better college than Notre Dame. Just it's revered, and everybody knows how great it is at Notre Dame. You graduate. Did I read you went into the Air Force Reserve? Is that correct?
I was in the Air National Guard.
Oh, National Guard. Yep.
107th Tactical Fighter Squadron, Niagara Falls, New York. And then when I graduated, I had went, into basic training. I had worked at a station in Erie, Pennsylvania after I got out of Notre Dame briefly. And a classmate of mine at Notre Dame, his family had the Budweiser distributorship in Erie, and they sponsored the Gannon College games. So this guy's named Mike McCormick, a great friend, and he said, we sponsor the games. We'd like to have you do them on the radio, small radio network. So I did that. And then I had to go away for basic training, came back. And then Moose Krause, who was the athletic director at Notre Dame, an iconic figure there, called me. He said that WSBT, which is the South Bend Tribune stations, a very strong broadcasting operation. So there's sports guys leaving, and they asked us for a recommendation. We're recommending you. And I was not out of school just a few months when that happened.
Yeah.
And so I went out there and auditioned and got the job. Was there a couple of years. Came to New York. Frank Gifford brought me to New York to Channel 2, where I was like a gopher. I did the interviews for his sports show. And then off of Notre Dame, Bradley basketball broadcast, I did WSBT. The Knicks were looking for an announcer. And so I sent them the tape, and they hired me to be the announcer of the New York Knicks on radio and TV. That was in the 66, 67 season.
Wow.
And then off of that, that CBS liked the games, so they hired me to do the NFL. Oh. And so I ended up doing the NFL. It's the longest tenured announcer, 47 years, as you mentioned.
Yeah. That had to be nerve-wracking coming into the NFL. I mean, you were great at what you were doing, but still, to make it to the big league, that had to be exciting for you to finally make the big leagues.
Oh, it was, big thrill, and that's where it all began. Then I branched into a lot of other things, John. I always liked radio, and I was joined a very good radio station, WOR Radio, which is the nation's first talk station. I was on with John Gambling. It was called Rambling with Gambling. It was a talk morning radio show. Yeah. But I know for over 20 years on WOR, that show had more listeners than any radio station in America.
Really?
So it was a big, it was a big outlet.
That's unbelievable. So you're in the NFL, you're broadcasting the NFL, and you're doing your games every week. I'm just going to kind of throw out some things at you here and see what you remember of it. In 1970, I think was probably the biggest game to that point, I think, in your career. The Saints are playing the Lions in probably a nothing game. And Tom Dempsey's lining up for a 63-yard field goal. What do you remember about that?
Well, you set it up, John. Yeah, there was at that point, I think the record was Burt Rettishar kicked one from like 57 for the Colts earlier before I got in the league. But yeah, they lined up to kick a 63-yard field goal, which nobody could believe. There's guys that's subsequently gone a yard past that. but they did it in the Mile High city of Denver.
Yeah, right.
Tom Dempsey did it below sea level.
Yeah,
The field at Tulane Stadium is 2 feet below sea level.
yeah.
But what was in so many, I mean, that kind of has really stuck with me. CBS put it out in a record and the call, but Pat Summerall is a very good friend. We worked together a lot. He was a kicker in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So he was really interested. And, I didn't work that game with Pat, but about the kick. And he said, what amazed him, he went to New Orleans to do a game a few weeks later. It was an artificial turf field at Tulane Stadium. And they put a little gold patch on the field where Dempsey kicked the field goal from. Now, in those days, the uprights weren't at the back of the end zone; they were at the front.
Yep.
So he kicked it from his own 37-yard line, 30, whatever. I guess 63 yards.
Amazing.
And Pat Summerall said he lined up. He wanted to feel what the wind was like. He's just before a game.
Yeah.
He said what really amazed him more than anything else, you always check the flags fore and aft. So when I turned around and saw how close the other goalpost was, it was right behind me.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of variables in that, John, in that kick, because the Lions were going to rush their whole team. Joe Scarpati, the holder, and Dempsey got together, and the center, Jerry Sturman, they decided they'd take an extra yard drop for the hold. Wow. So instead of 7 yards, it was 8 yards, which they hadn't practiced. And because he had to kick it that far, Tom Dempsey took, I think, an extra 2 steps. He literally ran into the ball like a kickoff, and he hit the ball, and I could tell it was going to get that far.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, I don't believe this. And it, just made it over the upright, and history was made.
Your call is fantastic on that. The exuberance in your voice, you could really see. You really had no idea that he would be able to kick a ball that far, but it's amazing to hear that on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. If it's okay with you, I'm just going to run through some of the games, and I had a great time researching the games that you did, the famous games that you actually called, and I mean, there's some just unbelievable games in here. I want to go to the next one, which has been made famous by the movie Rudy, and you actually called the Rudy Rudiger game in 1975 at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. And in all honesty, I never heard of Rudy Rudiger until years later. Yeah. Because he was a walk-on, and at the end of the game, Notre Dame was up at a pretty good margin. And they put a lot of guys in at the end, spent 4 years working as tackling dummies. And they put Rudy in, and he was a part of the sack at the end of the game. But he parlayed it into something incredible. He's world famous. He claims the movie Rudy is like Lucille Ball and her show that's somewhere in the world it's on at some time all day long. It never goes off. Somewhere the movie Rudy is being shown.
Yeah.
And he really he was a guy who wouldn't take no for an answer, Rudy. And what he did, John, the most interesting thing about Rudy, he wrote a book called Rudy's Rules. Every kid should read it. Yeah. It's about basically basic advice. Don't take no for an answer, and don't let anybody tell you what you should think or what you should do. You go after it and do it. And to give you an idea, he wanted to get the movie made. There was a famous movie, it well, The Hoosiers.
Oh, yeah.
And a guy named Anthony Pizzo went to the University of Indiana. Oh, yeah. He was the director of that movie. And everybody was enamored by Hoosiers, but Rudy decided he was going to make a movie about his life, but he had to get Anthony Pizzo to do it. So he badgered Pizzo so much. He lived in Santa Monica, Anthony, and he said, "You come on out." And he said he set a date someplace, and Rudy goes to some restaurant to meet him for lunch. And no, Anthony Pizzo. And, an hour went by, an hour and a half, and they figured maybe this isn't going to work out. But Rudy didn't take no for an answer. So Rudy knew if it was in Santa Monica, it had to be he had to live somewhere around there. So he sees a mailman. He said, "Excuse me." He said, "I'm looking for Anthony Pizzo. I've got a meeting. It's very important. And I lost his address." He said, "I just delivered his mail. He's over here. Give him the address." God. He knocked on the door, and Anthony Pizzo said, "How do I say no to you? I don't." So he made the movie.
Isn't it?
And he didn't like Notre Dame. Pizzo didn't like Notre Dame. He was an IU grad. He was a Hoosier. Really? Yeah.
How about that? What a great story that is. Did you ever meet Rudy? Have you ever talked with Rudy?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I met him. I know him very well. Yeah.
It's
He lives
great.
out in Henderson, Nevada now, near Las Vegas,
Yeah,
and he speaks a lot of places. Does a lot of stuff for kids, though. It's a
yeah,
very
that's great.
engaging figure, really. But he just would not take no for. He loved Notre Dame. Grew up in Peoria, and I think he was in the Navy before he went to Notre Dame, wasn't
Yeah.
he? And
Yeah.
but if you say hello to Rudy, you're in for a interesting conversation because
I can
he can
imagine.
talk.
I can imagine. Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I'm going to keep cruising along, and I want to get your remembrances of these games because this is fantastic. I love talking about this with you. Not only did you do football, I mean, you did basically everything else. You did basketball, NCAA basketball, or NBA basketball, National Hockey League. You did Olympics. You did swimming. You did golf. I mean, everything.
Yes, I. The only one I never did play-by-play on was the National Hockey League, but I did
Yeah.
a show for like 5 years that the NHL had. There was a syndicated radio show, and I've always been a hockey fan, particularly a Buffalo Sabres fan.
Oh yeah.
So we got to root them in. We get this turned around.
It's been a long time since they made the playoffs, Don, so we can use any help you want to give us. I want to bring up this game because I know our fans will really get a kick out of this one. You did NBA, and you happen to do Game 3 of the 1976 playoffs with the Braves and the 76ers. And series was tied 1 game apiece, and it went to Game 3 at the Spectrum. And the game's coming down to the end, and it's one of the wildest finishes, and I can't believe to this day it even happened. Can you talk about the guy who was shaking the backboard at the end of the game, if you remember that? Do you remember that?
I do. It was crazy. Yeah, that was the Sabres never should have. The Braves never should have left Buffalo.
Oh yeah,
and it was a shame they left.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember that as the most vivid game I've done, but I certainly remember it.
yeah,
I remember a lot of other Buffalo games, particularly the Bills. I've said so many great Bills games.
oh yeah.
And but yeah, that was the Braves were good. And Buffalo's such a great sports town. I don't care what the sport is, they're going to show up. The Buffalo fans are phenomenal.
No question. I mean, rabid fan base, and to lose the Braves, like the way they lost them, was just a tremendous shock to everybody. There was a lot of good basketball fans here, and to lose them the way they did, it just doesn't make any sense. But I just want to get back to that game just for the people who remember the game. McAdoo's going to try to make 2 free throws to win the game, and the guy's shaking the backboard.
Right.
And McAdoo, being McAdoo, makes the first one as the basket's shaking.
As he said later, a moving target.
Yeah, yeah. And Jack Ramsey's screaming on the sidelines. He's moving the basket. They hauled him out of there. McAdoo sinks the other one, and they win. I never forget you called that game, and I thought how great was that our own Don Criqui calling that.
The only thing I ever heard, I didn't do it again. There was a game at St. Bonaventure where they had a tremendous winning streak going. I think they were playing Niagara, and Niagara, the game was like Bonaventure was up by like a point, and with a few seconds left, Niagara stole the ball and was driving down for the winning shot and the winning streak. And guess what? As things would happen, the lights went out.
Yep.
That's another one. But I wasn't at that one.
Yeah, I've heard about that game. It was just was that the Riley Center? Was that in St. Bonaventure?
Yeah.
Or was that was at the Riley Center? Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I'm going to keep going on.
Okay.
Miracle at the Meadowlands. Joe Pisarcik. What do you remember about that? End of the game.
Well, that had an enormous impact on the National Football League, that game. What happened was the Giants were beating the Eagles, and Giants were running out the clock. And in their wisdom, Joe Pisarcik, we had Broadway Joe Namath with the Jets, and Patterson Plank Road, Joe Pisarcik, which is the street outside the stadium. And he took the ball and handed it off, or tried to Larry Zonka.
Yeah.
Just to run out and they missed the connection. If you've seen the film, the ball bounced down, and Herman Edwards has gone on to be a terrific coach.
Yeah.
He leapt on it like a dog on a pork chop, as he says, and off he went into the end zone, and the Eagles won the game. But that changed everything with the Giants. At that time, Mara ran the team, and there was another half of the family at 50% interest also. the late Jack Mara's family, and they insisted they had more say-so over how the team would be run. And so Pete Rozelle, is in his wisdom, as he always did the right thing, he stepped in. He said, well, with a very good GM, I think, would be George Young.
Oh, yeah.
So they put George Young in to run the team.
Mhm.
And they kicked around a little bit, a couple of years. And then he hired a guy named Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
And they subsequently have gone on to win 4 Super Bowls. But it really changed with that game. And the coach of the LA Rams, his grandfather, Sean McVay's grandfather, John McVay,
Oh, yeah.
he was a great football man. He went on to the 49ers, was in their front office. And he would have been invaluable to stay if he stayed with the Giants. But he went in this clean sweep. And so a lot of things changed. And the Giants became, the Giants, the New York team is very important to the well-being of the league because that's where the advertisers are based primarily.
Yeah.
So if the team is bad, the people don't like the league as much.
Yeah.
So you turn the whole league around.
Yeah. It's amazing how that one play, like you said, just led to a whole dynasty to come after it because of that play. But again, that's another one on YouTube that your voice is just phenomenal in that. You call it fantastic. It sends chills when you watch those old videos again.
I was doing with Sonny Jurgensen, who was a former Eagle before he went to the Redskins. And he was dumbfounded.
Yeah. How do you do that?
First of all, John, you couldn't rehearse this if you tried to do it again.
Yeah.
Had the ball bounce straight up on a fumble handoff.
Yeah.
And, the Giants were stunned. The guy you got to credit is Herman Edwards. I mean, he was a good D-back.
Yep.
But he was in it so fast and he was gone.
Yeah.
People had left the stadium, got in their cars to hear the post-game show. Wasn't what they wanted to hear.
A wild finish. I'm glad you brought up Sonny Jurgensen. You've been paired with some really, really good analysts through the years, from John Brody to Bob Trumpy to Ahmad Rashad to our own Steve Tasker. How important is it to have a guy at your side that's as good as you are?
Well, it's a teamwork. It really is. A lot of guys, it's usually a 2-man booth. I think every booth should be a 3-man booth. I think you just develop topics. I've never done a 3-man booth I didn't like, but I've worked with, like you mentioned, the guys. Steve Tasker, certainly, there's a guy should be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to be.
Yeah.
But if special teams is a third of football, offense, defense, and special teams, and he's acknowledged as the greatest special teams player ever. And to be honest with you, Marv Levy said one time, the best receiver on the Buffalo Bills teams that went to 4 straight Super Bowls was Steve Tasker.
Yeah.
And then now the question would be, well, why did he play? As Marv Levy said, he won more games with us on special teams. Yeah. You can't play a guy that much.
Yeah. Jim Kelly said he ran the best routes. Of all of them, he ran the best routes. I mean,
and a great guy.
Can't get any better praise than that.
No, I know. Well, you go on. Go ahead, John.
No, I was just gonna add to your point. I want to get at least a couple more games in here that you're famous for.
Yes.
And I got to say this before I go any further. In my era, your voice is one of the voices that I just totally think back to when I was growing up. It was Kurt Gowdy, it was Al Michaels, it was Keith Jackson, Jim McKay, Vin Scully, Howard Cosell, and you. I mean, I more games that I watched as a young boy growing up, where you were part of. So I want to just say that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, John.
The kids from our youth.
Let's go.
Let's
go.
The
guy you work with is the teamwork is key to broadcasting, just like it is to playing games.
Exactly.
In all honesty.
Yeah. Talk for just a minute or so about the epic in Miami, Dolphins and Chargers, 1981. Maybe the greatest game ever played.
Yeah, it was Sports Illustrated picked it as the game of the century, and it was a game with a lot of mistakes, were fumbles and things like that. But Dan Fouts was quarterbacking the Chargers, and he said, people don't realize Sports Illustrated picked it as the game of the century, not just the NFL game of the century, the game of the century. Of course, the Chargers won it in overtime. Kellen Winslow, he wouldn't die, just get carried off the field. He'd come back out. tight end, and it was a wonderful victory for the Chargers. But I've done so many great games at the Orange Bowl, which is now taken down. It's now the Marlins baseball stadium, a new one.
Yeah.
But I've done 14 Orange Bowls, and I think at least half were for the national championship, including the Miami-Nebraska game in January of 1984.
Yeah, in terms of college football games, that has to rank in the top 5 of all time. I'll never forget watching it. I think Nebraska had a 22-game unbeaten streak.
Yes, they did.
And it came down to they went for 2 points at the end of the game.
Well, if they had kicked an extra point, John, they would have been the only unbeaten team at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because Miami had lost a game earlier. And then in the afternoon, I forget there was always the Fiesta Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Orange Bowl. NBC, we had all three. And the outcome of the national championship was greatly impacted every year by those 3 games. So Tom Osborne just kicked the extra point, but his credit, he was playing to win. It was the number 1 team in the country. And, the pass on 4th down, and the guy threw it, Turner Gill, later coached the Buffalo Bulls.
Yeah. There's another Buffalo connection.
I always saluted Tom Osborne for that decision, but our whole family my wife Molly would pack all the kids up. We'd all go down to the Orange Bowl year after year. It was a great time.
Yeah.
But in the stands, 2 of my sons that were there said they were certain the stadium was going to come down. The noise before the extra 2-point conversion try said the place was shaking.
Yeah.
I just remember, a half hour before kickoff, the noise was as loud in that stadium as if they were playing the last seconds again.
Yeah. Was there a reason that you were picked to be the Orange Bowl announcer every year?
Well, there was an assignment that NBC gave me, and so I did it year after year. And everybody seemed to like it. And I worked with John Brody on some, Bob Trumpy on some.
Yep.
But invariably, it was a tremendous game because the Big 8 champions, now the Big 12, was invariably either Nebraska or Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was either number 1 in the country or very close to it. So the game impacted the national championship.
Yeah.
Barry Switzer won a national championship there. Jimmy Johnson won one for Miami there. Howard Schnellenberger won that great game between Miami and Nebraska. Miami's first national championship.
Yeah. It seems it's kind of sad that the Orange Bowl has kind of lost that luster. It hasn't really had that like it used to have in the 80s and in the 90s.
Well, what's happened, it's great to have a college playoff, but it's completely cut the legs out of the bowl games.
Yeah.
Every other bowl game's an afterthought now.
Yeah.
And so, then all the bowl games came into play. And on the final day, a lot of people were looking to see who won and what happened. And then they would vote on the national champion. Now they play it off on the field, which I guess they should.
Yeah.
But I think college football misses a lot by not having the bowls being more impactful as they used to be.
Yeah, no question. I used to get up for just about every bowl game. Now it's like we don't even watch the other bowls because we want to watch the last 2 or 3. So yeah, you're right. I want to bring this up too. We got about 7 more minutes. In 1979, you get, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were traded. You were one of the only announcers that was supposedly traded for another announcer, Kurt Gowdy. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well,
story?
they said what happened was NBC wanted me to come over there. It was before the 80 Olympics, which, by the way, we never went to. Jimmy Carter blocked it, which were going to be in Moscow. And because the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan, Jimmy Carter said no U.S. athletes will compete there. But that's how I went over there. And then, I took over a lot of the stuff at NBC, and then Kurt went to CBS.
Yeah.
but I stayed a lot of years. I was at NBC for 20 years.
Yeah. I just think it's funny how when you look up your history and your bio and they kind of call it a trade. And I was just curious if that was actually really like, hey, we'll give you Gowdy if you give us that kid Don Criqui.
At that time, I don't think they really people talked about it like that, but things just fell that way, I think.
Yeah.
I left the void at CBS because I was doing a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
And then Kurt went over there.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit, switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about Buffalo sports. You still keep up with Buffalo sports, Don?
Do I? And
The
so does my
Bills?
wife, Molly. I'm married to a girl from North Buffalo, Molly O'Brien.
Yeah.
And her dad was from Oklahoma. He was a surgeon in Buffalo, but he was a true rabid football fan. And she would watch the games with him. And she knows more about sports than any woman I've ever been around. I mean, she loves it.
Yeah.
When she reads box scores. So that's, she's been a great influence on my broadcasting because she critiques it. And she's right.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
It's got to be
doing that.
Got to be great having a wife that's just as interested as you are. So you get to watch the Bills a lot. You ever get to tune in and see the Sabres play?
Not since last night. You know, Molly gets me the package every year.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think good times are ahead for the Sabres, and I'll tell you why. I don't know how you could ever put a price on what Ralph Wilson meant to sports in Western New York.
Yeah.
You know, he brought the Bills there. He kept them there. People tell me he kept the American Football League going because he lent money to teams who were really in tough shape. And Ralph was a phenomenal businessman, phenomenal, very, very successful. And now, could he ever be? Now, I've never met Terry Pagula, and his wife Kim, they say, is also equally effective and outstanding. They're a great, great asset to Western New York. Yeah. I mean, first of all, he's smart, and he got borrow $7,500 from family members to go drilling for gas. But my point is this: they made some great decisions with the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. They hired. You know, you don't know. Most assistant coaches or coordinators do not make it as head coaches. Well, in Sean McDermott, I think the Bills have a guy that's going to end up in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
The guys from, well, look at how his guys play for him.
Yeah.
You know, some of the great ones, you see him on the sideline, there's seemingly no emotion. Yeah. You know, Chuck Noll was like that. Tom Landry was like that.
Yeah.
Belichick largely, he doesn't show much.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's something in the chemistry with him and his players. In addition to the X's and O's, they want to play for this guy.
He changed the culture.
He changed the culture, but you win football games by getting a Bill Polian to pick your players, like when he ran the Bills. And they picked this guy, Brandon Beane, who I've also never met. Mm-hmm. But the Bills have done a phenomenal job with their personnel. And their quarterback, there's not a guy in the National Football League I would trade him for, not one. Yeah. Now you can say that at this point, but Brady's 43 years old. This guy, you know, Josh Allen's 24.
Yeah, he's got another 15 years ahead of him.
I would not trade him. I would not trade him for the Kansas City quarterback.
Yeah, that's a bold statement, but I think you're right.
Let me explain it. I'll take 6'5", 240 any day over 6'1", 215.
Yeah.
You know, the guy at Kansas City's terrific. But he's coming off a 6-month injury now. They think, oh, he hurt his toe. They got that. That's a bad injury.
Yeah.
He's a run and cut, plant and free insurrection player.
Yeah.
It's 5 months before he's going to be going full speed. Now, hopefully he'll be back to what he was. But I think Josh Allen, you know what Josh Allen has done?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's no
question. He came in, he wasn't accurate enough. Okay, well, the next year is a little more accurate. He's getting close. Yeah. Last year, he was a finalist for the MVP.
Yeah, amazing.
And, you know, Mahomes at age 24 has won a Super Bowl, been an MVP of the league and the Super Bowl. So he's a great player. I'm not denying that at all.
Yeah.
But I would not change Josh Allen, trade him for anybody at this stage, what he is and what he brings. And I think in the weeks ahead, John, people say, well, they're going to re-sign him. This is my opinion, because I've never met Terry Pagula. But I think in the next 3 months from now, he'll sign an 8-year contract averaging $42 million a year. Josh.
Wow. I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think you have to worry about anything. He's not going anywhere. So,
well, you know, the people of Buffalo have recruited him better than anybody. He said he never wanted to play anyplace else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this guy is a tremendous player.
Yeah.
And another thing I'd like to say about football, John, is, you know, people make these sweeping assessments. The Bills aren't quite where the Kansas City Chiefs are just yet. Well, the Bills made a lousy trip. Nobody wants to fly to Kansas City in the middle of January to play a game on the road.
Yeah.
But they won home field. I was around Bill Belichick. I've had 100 private meetings with him over the years because I did their preseason network for 20 years. And I talked to him. And Bill Belichick is a very different person, I think. He's much more convivial than he is when he's getting interviewed. But I said about, he said about the playing football and the NFL and what it means and what you have to achieve. He said that you slug it out for 16 games. Yeah. He said it's brutal. And you do it for one reason and one reason only. That's to get home field.
Yeah.
And he said, if you got home field, your chances of winning the Super Bowl are vastly better.
Yeah.
And the reason the Kansas City Chiefs beat Buffalo, they played at Kansas City. The week before, the Ravens, who I thought were the hottest team in the league, they came to Buffalo and got beaten pretty soundly. I think that if the Bills had to play that game at Baltimore on a cold Saturday night, the Ravens win the game. I think it's a 1 or 2 point difference in those teams on a neutral field. I would take Buffalo over them by the slightest of margins on a neutral field.
Yeah.
But, people don't know the scope of winning, how hard it is to win games. I'll never forget, I knew Bill Walsh very well. And I worked with Bill on some things. And he said, you'll never know unless you coach or play in this league how hard it is to win games.
Yeah.
And he said, if you lose a game with the hundreds of man hours that go into game planning with your whole staff, he said, you're so down, you think you'll never get over it. Yeah. And he said, if you ever lose 2 games in a row, you are certain you'll never win another game. That's what he said. It's very hard.
Yeah. Oh,
Buffalo's got a winning group. Now, I'm going to see what they've got this great young linebacker, the kid from Boston College, and who they're debating on whether or not they'll keep him.
Milano?
Matt Milano.
Yeah.
I mean, he can cover, but, and I think he's a really good player, but you can't blow up your cap. I mean, if someone's going to offer him $14 million a year, the Bills have to decide, are they going to match that?
Yeah, that's a tough decision to make.
Yeah.
Listen, Don, before I just want to let you know, once they start a countdown on these meetings, I have to log off pretty quick within a minute.
Okay.
So we're going to keep talking until you give me the signal but when we get down to a minute, I want to wrap it up. So it's been great talking with you. Anything else? Anything you want to talk about? I mean, what are you doing right now? I mean, are you doing anything?
I actually am. Right. One of my sons, Galen, he played basketball at Princeton and was on Wall Street. And he and I do a commentary show that's on over 100 stations. And we were just down this morning talking about it.
That's great.
I keep my hand, and I'm involved in different other things outside of broadcasting games.
Yeah, that's great. Your family's healthy, everything, your grandkids.
Yeah, they're good. 4 sons, 1 daughter. They're all with their families right around us. So we still see them through the window a lot. It's been a lot of, the pandemic has shut a lot of things down.
Yeah.
But the 4 boys all live in the same town in New Jersey. So we have them and then 15 grandchildren. So it's a good group.
That's fantastic. I have a friend that lives near you, and he said he used to drive by your house every now and then, and you'd be out shooting hoops with the kids.
Oh, yeah.
Out in the driveway.
That's it.
That's great. I mean, I got to say, this has been fantastic. I really wish we had another 40 minutes to talk, because I could talk with you forever. Let me ask you this. Do you ever get back to Buffalo?
Yeah, I haven't been back in a while. Whenever you can. I've got family there. My sister Claire Myers and her family are there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of great friends, Bob Bennett and Bernie Cryan, Neil O'Rourke, the Kahuna's back there. And so we go back. But, since I'm not doing I used to be back, a number of times a year, because I would do, several Bills games a year for sure.
Yeah. Well, when I put this up on YouTube tomorrow morning, I'll make sure I send you the link, and you can share it with all your friends and family here in Buffalo. I'm going to share it with St. Joe's. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of a Marauder family tuning in to watch it as well. And I'm really excited about doing this with you, because you've been, like I said, you were one of the voices in my youth when I was growing up. When I heard Don Criqui come on, it was excitement. And a special way for me, because like I said, I grew up a half a mile from where you
did.
We went to St.
John's you grew up in the better part of town over on Doncaster.
I had to laugh about that, because my parents weren't well off at all, and my
Well, they
parents.
weren't too, it wasn't terrible though, if you were on Doncaster.
Yeah, but we were the poorest family on the block. We had to leave. They said, get out. You can't pay the taxes anymore. So we had to move a little bit north of that to off of Belmont.
Oh, so you're right over by St. John's, right?
Yeah, by St. John's. Yeah. And what a great neighborhood that is.
It is,
So,
yeah.
please let me know if you ever come back into town. I would love to just meet you and shake your hand and thank you personally in person for all you've done for Buffalo, for the NFL, for broadcasting, for Notre Dame, for everything, because you're one of the greats, Don, and I just want to thank you again for being on with us.
Well, those are very nice things you say, John. And I want you to know I appreciate them greatly. And it was great to be on with you. I love seeing that St. Joe's football shirt on you.
I'll tell you, the school's
I didn't
doing
play
great.
football there when I was there. They'd go unbeaten for like 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
St. Joe's.
And now they have their own complex right behind the school, all AstroTurf, the beautiful facility. The school is doing great.
I'm involved in it. I'm still involved in St. Joe's with Chris Falco, who's the new president, and so it's going great, St. Joe's.
They're doing a great job over there. They're shaping young men's minds and doing a great job. And they've handled this COVID situation extremely well. And you wouldn't expect anything less from St. Joe's. It's a great place. Well, listen, I want to sign off and I want to thank you again for coming on. I'll send you the link so you can watch it, and I'll be talking with you. Okay.
I appreciate it very much, Chris. We'll talk again.
You got it. Thanks. Oh, that's all right. Thanks, Don. Have a great night. We'll talk soon.
All right, John. Thank you.
Bye now.
Yeah.